Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk, back another video day. And today I'm going to be doing my college football week 8 top 25 rankings predictions, as I do every week before the rankings come out on Sunday. And let's get into it. It feels like every week I'm saying this is the hardest predictions, the hardest week of predictions I've done. Because I feel like there's this week. Last week there wasn't a really big problem about outside teams looking in, thinking there was a lot of teams that are well mentioned, that should be well mentioned about potentially being candidates of being in the top 25. It was more the fact that there was a lot of losses. We saw a lot of losses in the top 11. There were 4 or 5 teams last week that lost in the top 11. So that was mainly the mess of things last week. But for me, the best of things this week is just the fact that, to me, I look at so many teams that are not in my top 25 this week, and I really think there's so many good teams that are going to be left out. And it's kind of hard to bring all these teams into the top 25 when you only have 2 weeks. When you only have 2 teams most likely coming out of the top 25 this week. You have Utah, number 16 Utah, who will most likely be out of the top 25 after losing another game against a unranked team. And then you got Oklahoma, who was number 19, and they got absolutely crushed by Texas. I'm not 100% sure that Utah will be out, although I'm pretty confident. But Oklahoma, I am 100% sure that they will be out of the top 25. I'm not just saying that as a Longhorns fan. If Oklahoma would have been able to have been more competitive against the number 1 team in the country, I think they would have stayed in. Or if they had a higher ranking, like if Oklahoma being a 1-loss team, if they were let's say if they were 15, or if they were at Utah's spot at 16, I think they maybe be at one of the last spots at 24, 25. But knowing that they got crushed and they're at 19 and that's their second loss, I don't see Oklahoma staying in, because that wasn't the best performance by Texas, and Oklahoma still scored 3 points and lost by 31. Quinn Ewers was terrible. He threw an interception his first game back from injury. Texas still wins by 31. That's embarrassing for Oklahoma. They're not going to be in. But I want to mention all these teams that I don't have making it, that you can honestly make an argument that these teams have a case to be in the top 25. And this really makes it look like it should be the top 35 instead of the top 25. Here are just 10 teams that honestly have a right to be in the top 25, just like all the other top 25 teams do. I wouldn't say all the top 25 teams, but you look at a lot of the teams that to start off the top 25. There are so many teams that could be in there as well. Makes me really wish there was a top 30 instead of a top 25. But here's just a couple. Here's just 10 teams. Nebraska. Nebraska's not going to get in. They were one of the top receiving votes last week, but they had the bye this week. I don't see them getting in. Vanderbilt, who last week beat Alabama. Now they beat Kentucky, who's been playing some good football. I don't see them getting in, although they very well could be and should be. Arkansas, who's 4-2 and beat Tennessee. Arizona State, who's now 5-1 and just beat 16 Utah. Iowa, who's 4-2 and just beat the crap out of Washington, and one of their losses is to Ohio State. Then you got Syracuse, who's 5-1, and you got Kyle McCord, Ohio State's former quarterback, absolutely lighting it up with Syracuse. You have Washington State, who's 5-1 as well. They're playing great football. They had a great win this week. You have Texas Tech, who's 5-1 as well, and they had a great win last week against Arizona, but they're on the bye this week. You have Wisconsin, who's 4-2. They had a blowout win against Rutgers today. And then you have Georgia Tech, who's 5-2 and have been playing good football. And they have 2 losses that are against kind of good teams. 2 losses. One of their losses is against Louisville, and I can't remember their other loss. I want to say it was against Florida. No, I don't think it was Florida. I can't remember their other loss, but both of their losses are to good teams. So those are 10 teams that, you know, have arguments to be in the top 25 potentially, but there are so many good teams that already are in the top 25 and haven't lost that, you know, they're not going to get in. But let's start with the top 25. Starting off with 25, I have Navy getting in. They're 5-0, previously non-ranked, beat Air Force 34-7. And at number 24, here was what would break history. 6-0 Army, previously non-ranked, beat UAB 44-10. These are two teams in Army and Navy who have had some high votes these last couple weeks. I'm pretty sure Navy had 44 last week and Army had 33. I'm putting Army ahead of Navy just because of the fact that Army had a more dominant win than Navy did. But here's where the history comes into things. These two teams, Navy and Army, have not been ranked at the same time since 1960. And, you know, I have a very close relationship with my grandfather, who is over 80 years old, or just over 80 years old, and I was talking to him about this, and I was like, you know, how crazy is that? And what makes me, when I hear this, really makes me, you know, makes me think my mind is exploding about this fact, that my grandfather, who's 80 years old, was a senior in high school the last time these two teams were ranked at the same time. So I'm pretty confident that both of these two teams are going to be ranked, since they're both, you know, still undefeated. Both received high votes last week, and then they continue the good football by continuing being undefeated and dominating performances too. Yeah, winning 44-10 and 34-7. So potentially expect history tomorrow with Navy and Army. At 23, I got Michigan. I don't think Michigan should move at all. I mean, like, the only reason I think Michigan's gonna move up one spot from 24 is because you have Army and Navy coming in. They're 4-2. I don't know. If it was up to me, I think Michigan would be out, and I think someone like Vanderbilt or Arkansas, who had some really nice wins these last couple weeks, would be in the top 25. But no, Michigan, who's looked terrible this season, is in instead. I guess just to the fact that they're the national champions. But if it was up to me, I would say Vanderbilt should be in over Michigan or Arkansas. But Michigan's still in the top 25, which I don't understand. Illinois 5-1, previous number 23, beat Purdue 50-49 overtime. I don't see Illinois moving up too much. I mean, it was a decent win, but they almost lost to 1-5, now 1-5 team. Nearly lost. They blew a lead. I just don't see them moving up much. I think it's the same spot or move up one for Illinois. And then at 21, I have SMU. I don't think I've ever predicted for a team that had the bye to move up this much. But I got SMU, who's 5-1, previous number 25. They had the bye week. Why do I have a team that was just on the bye moving up so much? Number one, I mean, like, SMU's 5-1. I don't think Illinois deserves to be over SMU with the good football that SMU's playing. And then you got Illinois, who nearly just lost to Purdue, who's 1-5. And then you got Michigan, who's playing terrible football, and they were on the bye as well. I really like Army and Navy, but they don't deserve to be over SMU. SMU, I would love to see them at 21. I just don't know if you see the committee move a number 25 team up to 21 after they were on the bye. If SMU would have played this week and won, I think it was for sure they'd be at 21, maybe even 20 or 19. I don't know. But the fact that they had the bye, I think maybe 23 or 22 is more realistic. But SMU deserves to be over Illinois, Michigan, Army, and Navy, if you ask me. 20, I got Pittsburgh. They're 6-0, preseason number 22. Beat California 17-15. This is another situation where I'm not going to move up Pittsburgh that much, just because the fact that it was a good win. They're 6-0. They're playing good football, but they barely beat California. And look, at the same time that it's been the case for a couple ranked schools. It was the case for Miami, but still, I mean, Pittsburgh. I felt like Pittsburgh should have got the job done easier, and scored more than 17 points. But it is what it is, because Miami lit up that defense last week in the second half. All right, 19. I got Missouri 5-1. Preseason number 21. It was a good win for Missouri. Beat UMass 45-3, but it was UMass. I mean, that was still a really bad loss last week against Texas A&M, but I got them moving up a couple spots with a solid win. I don't think it's too impressive. Then at 18, I got Kansas State. They're 5-1. Preseason number 20, another ranked team that barely won. I mean, squeezed out a win, beating Colorado 31-28. 17, I got Indiana 6-0. Preseason number 18. They had the bye this week. Boise State. I mean, I love watching Boise State. 5-1. Preseason number 17. It was hard for me to move Boise State up. I think they could maybe get up to 15. When you got so many good teams playing in the top 15 area right now. But I mean, Boise State, if they can keep playing the way they're playing, I mean, these next couple weeks, if they can continue racking up some wins, they might be near the top 10 in the next couple weeks. I mean, especially with the way that Ashton Jeanty is playing. He's the best running back in the country, of course. But I think he definitely should be the Heisman favorite. I don't think you're seeing any quarterbacks in this country absolutely killing it, enough to the point where you beat out a running back like Jeanty. I mean, like the only quarterback I think of that like has a chance of beating him out at the Heisman with the way things have gone so far is maybe I'd say Dylan Gabriel, who's absolutely been outstanding for Oregon. Texas, I look at Texas, who's the top team in the country. That's usually the top team in the country. Usually has a favor, but that's hasn't been the case for Texas. Quinn's been good most of the time, but he's been injured, so they've had Arch. I look at Penn State. Geraller's had his moments, but he hasn't been amazing. Ohio State, I think Will Howard's been really good. He could be a candidate for Heisman. Carson Beck, I don't think has been great enough to be the number one Heisman candidate over a running back like Jeanty. He's definitely a Heisman candidate. I just don't know if I see him taking that award from Ashton Jeanty with the way things have gone so far. Cam Ward has done a lot of good too. I mean, there have been some quarterbacks that have been doing. Kate Klubnik. I mean, there have been some quarterbacks that have been doing some really good things. But at the same time, he's killing it for Boise State. He's fun to watch. That I could definitely say that. But I got them at 16. At 15, I got Ole Miss. They're 5-2. I think you definitely could make the argument that Boise State could be at 15 and Ole Miss could be at 16. I just don't know if I see them falling 7 spots from 9 to 16. Even though it was a loss since their second loss, it was still a loss against another top 15 on the road, playing in a place like LSU, a close game, 3-point game in overtime. It's not like Ole Miss got their butts kicked. It was a very close game. Ole Miss actually controlled for most of the ball game. So I think moving them down from 9 to 15 is already a lot, so I don't see them going to 16. All right. 14, I got Texas A&M. They're 5-1, preseason number 15 bye week. I think I've seen some people saying Ole Miss is going to go at 14 and then Texas A&M at 15. If they do that, that is so stupid. You got Texas A&M who's killing it against SEC teams right now. They're 3-0. They have the best record against SEC teams right now, the best record in the SEC. And they've been killing it against the SEC so far this season. And then you got a team like Ole Miss, who's done a lot of good things, but Ole Miss is 1-2 against the SEC this year. So I really hope that you see Texas A&M in front of Ole Miss, because I think they deserve to be. At 13, I got BYU, undefeated BYU 6-0. Previous number 14, they beat Arizona 41-19. It was a great win for BYU, especially against a solid Arizona team. 12, I got 5-1 Notre Dame, previously number 12, beat Stanford 49-7. This is probably where the shock comes into the things. At 11 and 10, I got some shockers. At 11, I got Tennessee 5-1. Previous number 8 beat Florida 23-17 in overtime. It should have not been that close for Tennessee, and they had way too many struggles, and especially coming off for a loss. And a very similar team that I have at 10, who's also coming off a loss and a very bad performance in this week. It's Alabama at 5-1. Previous number 7 beat South Carolina 27-25. If you're wondering, why do you have teams that got wins, even if there were close wins, that they should have not been that close? Why do you have them moving down so much? And that doesn't happen. We've seen it happen this year. I mean, Oregon had some struggles early on in the season where they would win and it'd be a close game, and they got moved down. We saw a couple games by Missouri against Boston College and Vanderbilt where they had close games and ended up winning. They fell quite a bit. We're talking 2, 3, 4 spots. So, and Missouri, Oregon at those times, I mean, both top 10 teams at the times that those two teams have fallen. So it's possible that Alabama and Tennessee could take a hit. And I'm going to explain over the next 3 teams that I have in the top 10 of why I think Alabama and Tennessee take a huge hit. It's not just the fact that they both lost last week, and this week they were terrible. Alabama coming back at home, barely beat a South Carolina team 27-25. Nearly went to overtime just like Tennessee, as they barely beat Florida 23-17. But it's also the next 3 teams I have in the top 10. LSU at 9. Being 5-1, just beat Ole Miss, the number 9 team in the country. Great win for LSU. Number 8, you got the unbeaten Iowa State. Previous number 11 beat West Virginia 28-16. At number 7, you got Clemson, who's 5-1, and outside of their only loss of the season to Georgia, they are playing amazing football. Previous number 10 for Clemson. They beat Wake Forest 49-14. Cade Klubnik is playing amazing football. I think Tennessee and Alabama are good teams. They had rough wins today, so it was a win, right? But I look at LSU, I look at Iowa State, and I look at Clemson, and all those teams as of right now, with the way that things have gone for Tennessee and Alabama these last couple weeks. LSU, Iowa State, and Clemson are all playing better football than those 2 teams right now. And I honestly believe that LSU and Clemson definitely should be ahead of Tennessee and Alabama. I think Iowa State's a little bit debatable, but since the fact that Iowa State is undefeated, I'd rather have Iowa State than Alabama and Tennessee. Not in the long run, but just right now in the rankings, knowing that Iowa State's undefeated, and then you got Alabama and Tennessee are both 5-1 and both nearly lost to unranked 3-2 teams this week. I'm gonna go with Iowa State, LSU, and Clemson over Tennessee and Alabama as of right now, just this week. Not on the whole year. Not when it matters at the end of the year. Just right now, going into week 8. Then at 6, I have Miami 6-0, staying at the same spot after the bye. At 5, I got Georgia. They're 5-1. Previous number 5 beat Mississippi State 41-31. This is another performance where it's a ranked team not getting a very impressive win. I mean, look, Georgia has had their good moments this year, but Georgia's actually had a lot of struggles. Really, I mean they have. I mean, Auburn, they had their moments last week where they had some struggles. Kentucky, they only beat Kentucky by 1. Obviously, we know what happened in Tuscaloosa with them losing to Alabama. I know that they ended up killing Clemson in the second half, but if you remember in the first half of that Clemson game in week 1, Georgia's offense looked absolutely dead in the first half. There have been times where Georgia's offense will look completely dead in the first half. And recently, these last couple weeks, we've seen times where their offense is dead in the first. Or sorry. Recently, these last couple weeks, we've seen times where their defense has been dead in the first half and dead in the second half. This week, their defense in the second half was horrendous against Mississippi State. And then a couple weeks ago, in the second half, in the first half, their defense was horrendous against Alabama. And their defense also had some struggles in the second half, even though Alabama was playing some bad football there in the second half. Alabama still managed to put up some scores and win that game again against Georgia. Georgia is struggling a little bit. I don't think not as much as Alabama, but they're struggling as well. There are a lot of good teams that are struggling. Ohio State, I got Ohio State at 4. I think you can make the argument that Ohio State should and could be at 3 and literally only fall one spot after a loss. I'm going to say that Penn State is at 3 because they're an undefeated team. And I don't see a way where the top 3 teams, you have top 3, you have 1, 2, and 3, and they're not the undefeated teams as it should be. But look, Penn State barely won. They beat USC by 3 in overtime. It's another overtime win for a ranked team where they're playing an unranked team. Meanwhile, Ohio State played against the number 3 team in the country in Oregon. Played great football, only lost by 1 point, 32-31. Big potential pass interference call that was not called. So a potential missed call didn't happen. Look at things like how close the game was, that the fact that they played good football against a great Oregon team, and they potentially could have had the ball game if it wasn't for a questionable call, although I'm not saying it was a bad call or was a good call. Anyways, I think that you could make the argument, even though Ohio State does have one loss, Ohio State could be at 3 and Penn State at 4, but I'm going to go Ohio State at 4 and Penn State at 3 because I just believe that they're not going to have the top 3. They're not going to have the top 3 spots are going to be the 3 undefeated teams that are right there. Even though Penn State really struggled against USC. All right, at 2, I think it's kind of obvious. I got Oregon. I got Texas at 1. It was a great win for Oregon. I thought they played a great game. Dylan Gabriel was great against Ohio State. But the fact that Texas had that dominant of a performance against OU in the Red River Showdown with a still banged up Arch Manning, with a still banged up Quinn Ewers who didn't look that great, makes Texas look even better, if you ask me. If it was a closer game, if Quinn looked even worse, and Texas, let's say Texas only put up 17 points on the board and Texas won 17-3, I think you make a good argument that Oregon should be number 1. But the fact that Texas won 34-3 and Quinn Ewers didn't even look that good, I think Texas is still number 1. And then to preview some ranked matchups next week, if my predictions are right, we would see, funny enough, number 10 Alabama and number 10 Alabama, number 11 Tennessee go up against each other. And then we would see number 22 Illinois and number 23 Michigan go up against each other. And then the big matchup, number 1 Texas versus number 5 Georgia. I'm pretty sure those 2 predictions will be right. I'm pretty sure Georgia will stay at 5 and Texas will stay at 1. So that should be right. Let me know your thoughts on my predictions in the comment section, and peace out.